Migraine headaches. This is probably one of the toughest headaches to deal with because there are so many different players. My name is Dr. Darby Campbell, and I help my patients with these every single week. And I do it very powerfully and effectively without any more drugs and medications. And so I'm going to go over some of the things I talk about with my patients and some of the things I help my patients with so that we can deal with these naturally. So let's dive in because we have a lot of content to cover. Try to stick around with me though. We're going through a lot. We may get a bit technical at times, but we'll be going over things to help abort a headache in mid-stride, how to actually address the root causes of headaches instead of just covering them up with medications. Let's find out what's causing these things and then deal with it so our body can heal and recover. Starting with what a migraine actually is. In adults, these are always single-sided. Very rarely are they double-sided. In children, they can be. In children, they can affect both sides. They can get the bilateral eyes or the bilateral temples. But almost always in adults, these are single-sided. They have a pulse wave quality to them. They have a prodromal period, which means they have a building phase and then they have an actual phase, and they can actually have a post phase as well too. These things can last hours to days. Thankfully, with our care, we're able to dramatically change that so you're not suffering so long, but these things can last a long time. They almost always involve light and sound sensitivity. That's with or without aura, they still always involve light and sound. So migraines can have an aura or they can be without aura. This was the without aura. The with aura adds a couple things. The with aura, we'll be looking at nausea, we'll be changing taste and smell. Sometimes we can involve speech. We can have altered vision. We can have altered smell and taste as well too. We can feel pins and needles throughout our body. And all of this is facilitated through the trigeminal cervical nucleus. This is where all head perception and sensory input is relayed before it's perceived in the cortex. In this trigeminal cervical nucleus, there's other inputs as well that come from different sensory organs, and actually including our gut and a couple other places of our body. So this is how the migraine headache can travel all over the place and create different symptoms, okay? Now, what to actually do about these things? Overall, we want to focus on just improving our overall health because there is so many different triggers and so many different things involved with migraines. We want to be looking at not so much how can I find and detect what's exactly causing these things, because you can be running down a rabbit hole forever. But if we just improve our overall level of health, we're going to be very successful in our management of these headaches, and we see this all the time. In every patient we treat, actually, we can either eliminate the headaches altogether or greatly, and I mean greatly, reduce the intensity, frequency, and duration of these migraines. And so when we start with overall health, we want to start with number one, that is nerve flow. That's brain and body nerve flow. And so when the brain can't communicate to the body and the body can't communicate through the brain, through the spine, the spinal column, the spinal nerves, that is very stressful for the brain and it causes a lot of problems. You can learn a little bit more about that in our introductory video on headaches, but this is vital for overall health. Migraines are commonly related to emotional health and stress in our lives, and so we want to be taking a cause of this and take proactive measures. Exercise, we're going to talk a little bit about more. Same thing with diet, we're going to get in below too, but sleep. If we're losing sleep or we're chronically kind of sleep depraved, our overall level of migraines goes up because we're not cleaning out the toxins in our brain very well. Sleep for the brain is that cleanup time. It's that time to kind of get rid of and process junk. If we're not getting enough sleep, we're building up toxins in the brain and we're going to accelerate neurologic decline and increase our chance of suffering with migraines. Some specific aspects of diet. One big thing we want to eliminate is something called excitotoxins. These are commonly put in preserved foods and highly processed foods to improve taste. They excite the nerves of our tongue, but the problem is they also excite the nerves in our brain, but they excite the nerves in our brain to the point of cell death. Quite literally, we're killing nerves with these toxins. The most popular ones are aspartame, glutamate, and MSG, and hydrolyzed proteins. These are very common artificial sweeteners and very common in highly processed foods to give them extra taste, okay? And so we want to eliminate these. Exercise. Exercise improves overall health, but some of the things we want to key in on with exercise is vascular health. So a lot of migraines have been tied to or thought to be connected with blood flow in the head. And a lot of times our society's become so inactive that our blood vessels really kind of lose the ability to constrict and dilate appropriately, and then therefore we can't manage it very well, and the blood vessel just can't do it very well. And so there's periods of time when the brain needs more blood. And if the blood vessels can't dilate and constrict appropriately throughout the body, it doesn't get the nutrients it needs. And this can cause significant problems because the brain needs oxygen and it needs metabolites to burn for sugar all the time. If it doesn't have those things, the cells will die. And so vascular health is important. Keys of that is a nitrogen oxide workout. This is a high intensity interval training. This is where we're going kind of full out for short durations of time. This tends to maximally dilate the blood vessels to promote blood flow throughout the body. Key point, we do not want to do this in the middle of a migraine because this will dilate the blood vessels in the brain, and commonly this will increase the migraine effect. And so we want to be careful with these. We want to do this as a general health measure, but while we're in an episode, no fly on the nitrogen oxide workout. A supplement to consider is magnesium. This is very commonly deficient across the whole population, but it's been found very deficient in people that suffer with migraines. And so supplement with magnesium can help normalize vascular contraction and overall blood pressure, but it also helps electrical conductions over nerves. Because when we get deficient in magnesium, our electrical conductions gets dysregulated and we tend to increase our overall pain level. And so magnesium is really important for that. Lastly, this isn't a form of exercise, although it could be if you're swimming, is cold. So getting our body super cold, either getting in an ice bath or having an ice shower or sitting in a frozen lake, cold therapy. What this does is the exact opposite of nitrogen oxide. It promotes vascular constriction. And so again, a max constriction of the blood vessel instead of a max relaxation, we are maximally constricting those arteries, and it's a good change. It's a workout for the blood vessel. And so then our vascular health can improve. Cold also has some neuroprotective properties. It helps trigger certain things in the body that slow down neurologic aging and help reverse some neurologic damage. And so this can be good for people suffering with migraines. Another part of exercise is kind of combined with diet is our overall metabolic health, our ability to metabolize nutrients in our body, predominantly our ability to metabolize fats and regulate blood sugar. When our body can't metabolize fat very well, we become very blood sugar dependent, and we become dependent on dietary sources of blood sugar because any excess blood sugar is immediately converted to fat. And so as soon as we run low on blood sugar, and if our body can't metabolize fat very well, we just need more dietary blood sugar. And so as a result, our blood sugar goes up and down. This is diabetes in a nutshell. Diabetes in the brain causes a lot of problems. In fact, Alzheimer's and dementia has been called type 3 diabetes because what's going on is the brain and our overall metabolism can't process blood sugar very well. And so there's periods where our blood sugar gets way too low. The problem for the brain is the brain cannot process any other metabolites besides blood sugar and something called ketones. It can't burn fat like other areas of their body. And so if there's no blood sugar present and there's no ketones present, the cell will starve and die. This will create neurologic decline and it can cause migraines. And so metabolic health, how we improve this is through exercise, but also through dietary tools. The ways to improve this: intermittent fasting, fasting altogether, carb restriction, and then just cleaning up our diet. And so intermittent fasting is where we go through periods of fasting, that's no eating, to periods of where we're eating. We don't really change what we're eating too much. The next step would be changing our breakdown of food and shifting the dietary prominence from refined carbohydrates to healthy fats and complex carbs and healthy proteins, shifting away from more of the simple carbs. And so more leafy green vegetables, and then fats and lean proteins. This can also be translated into full kind of keto dieting. This is where we are greatly restricting the amount of carbs in our body, and we greatly shift the focus from sugar metabolism to fat metabolism, because our brain actually loves ketones. If it had the option, it would burn ketones over blood sugar. It's more efficient. But the problem is the rest of the body doesn't produce ketones unless there is an absence of blood sugar. And until you have trained your metabolism to do that, this is where the work of keto dieting, it takes time to build it up, but it can be done. Blood sugar is also involved in mitochondrial health. A lot of migraines have actually been linked to the overall health and function of the mitochondria in the brain. And when we get up and down blood sugars, we tend to damage our mitochondria. The mitochondria are the actual energy producers in the cell. And so a way to help them and help repair them and prevent future damage to them is to supplement with CoQ10. And so I'm going to recommend you do that as well too. One aspect of diet is kind of overall level of inflammation. When we are chronically inflamed, we are going to have vessel inflammation and irritation as well too. And when that happens in the brain, that can create migraines. And so ways to decrease overall levels of inflammation is to decrease any sort of inflammatory foods. There are elimination diets for migraine specifically, trying to find the triggers, but the success rate of that actually isn't very high. But what they have found to be more successful is to just do an elimination diet to actually find sources of inflammation in your body. And so if we can eliminate foods that when you eat, you get inflamed, the common ones are dairies, soys, refined grains, eggs. It really depends on the person. So you have to kind of go through a process of doing it, and it's called elimination diet. And it's where you eliminate these things and then in a controlled way, introduce them back to figure out which ones you respond to. And so that's really powerful to decrease overall inflammation, improve overall health, and decrease pain and migraines in the body. Other supplements to take: vitamin D. A lot of people are super deficient in this, and as it relates to migraines, the lower vitamin D levels you have, the more likely you are to have a higher intensity and higher frequency and higher duration of migraines. I actually broke a headache group into different kind of subgroups based off of their vitamin D levels, and the ones with the lowest vitamin D had the highest intensity and highest frequency of migraines. The ones in the most kind of the highest level of vitamin D, all groups were deficient, by the way, but even in this deficient group, the ones with the highest or best levels had the lower intensity and frequencies. And so supplementing with vitamin D, and actually another study, reduced the likelihood and intensity of the migraine events by 50%. Another super powerful one is BComplex, specifically B2, B6, B12, and folate. And so these B vitamins were found to be deficient in migraine sufferers a lot, and particularly these ones. And when supplemented with, they did another study where they improved the supplementation of these, and they found another 50% reduction. And so if you combined BComplex with vitamin D, you're going to have some success with your migraine. And so I'm going to recommend you add those in. Lastly, magnesium supplementation. We touched about that up here. There's a specific supplement called magnesium threonate, and this is the form of magnesium that can actually bypass the blood-brain barrier to get into the brain. There's actually a lot of different forms of magnesium supplementation, but this one is highly absorbable by the body, and it is very good specifically for the brain. And so I'm going to recommend you supplement with this one for migraines. In fact, this is one of the ones that some doctors will do magnesium IVs or very high doses of magnesium threonate to actually abort a headache that is in process, a migraine headache in process. A couple more abort techniques. We already talked about cold. Cold is going to constrict that blood vessel, that dilation, that throbbing effect. And so if we put cold commonly at the very base of the skull right here, we can stimulate the acupressure point at the base of the skull, but we can also regulate that blood flow in the head and decrease that migraine intensity. And so cold is a very common technique. I'm going to post a picture in our blog with all the different acupressure points, but I'll point them out quickly. There's 2 right here, 1 in the middle, then there's 1 right in between your eyes, and then there's 1 right here. These are the very popular ones for migraines. In fact, I saw one picture doing my research where a woman just got a clothespin and she just pinned it right on her hand like that to press the acupressure point so that she could help her migraine. And so there are a lot of things that we can do. B2, very high doses of that. We talked about that down here. That can abort a migraine process. We already talked about magnesium as well too. Caffeine. Powerful, but a double-edged sword. So caffeine can help reduce a migraine, but too much can create a migraine rebound effect where we're getting the vascular constriction from the caffeine, but then as that caffeine's metabolized, that blood vessel then really fully dilates, and then we get a caffeine withdrawal headache, and then we'll get a really pounding headache. So about 100 milligrams here is safe, kind of like a cup of coffee sort of thing or a tea. We don't want to do too much on this. Lavender essential oil has been shown to be really powerful, particularly for migraines. The key spots for its application are on the inside of the upper lip and in the nostrils. With the sensitive skin here, I'm going to recommend you put it in a dilution oil, and then you can apply it to these areas to help with the intensity of the headache. Lastly, aerobics. We don't want to be doing the high intensity in the middle, but we can promote just blood flow throughout the body to try to decrease that pressure in the head. And also just low-grade aerobics can be relaxing. And so that's the goal here. This isn't intense exercise. We're trying to relax the body. And so kind of a brisk walk, a low-grade jog, or a hike, that can be the ones that can help a migraine process. Lastly, most importantly, the trigeminal cervical nucleus. In our introductory video, we talked about the power of hacking this. All pain that's perceived in the head is relayed in the upper cervical, upper neck, and lower brainstem. We can decrease that pain response through adjustments C1, C2, and C3. Every time we have a patient that's with a headache and we get them adjusted, the intensity is immediately reduced. Every single time, without fail, we are going to eliminate the headache or reduce the intensity significantly. We hear this over and over and over again. And it's how we're doing a neurologic hack. We are literally blocking the pain in a healthy way. With the chiropractic adjustment in C1, 2, and 3. And so I'm going to greatly recommend you watch video 1 to learn more about that, but then also just make sure you're getting adjusted. You can be doing all these things, but if you are not doing that, it's going to be far less powerful. We help our patients tremendously with these migraines. If you are suffering or you know someone who's suffering, make sure they watch this video, they do this stuff on this checklist, but most importantly, get them in here or get them to a chiropractor close by, because the most powerful thing they can do is get their upper neck checked and adjusted as necessary, and that will greatly, greatly help their migraine. My name is Dr. Darby Campbell, and I look forward to serving you at the next office visit. Bye for now.